You feel a sharp, narrow tightness in your chest, a relentless impulse to map out every hour of your coming days, as if you are drawing a straight, unbending line across a map of wild terrain. There is a frantic energy in your limbs, a phantom pressure that demands you maintain a perfect trajectory, forcing your life to bypass every curve, every dip, and every natural detour. It is as if you are standing in a small boat with a heavy iron-tipped pole, slamming it into the mud of the riverbed to halt the current, convinced that if you stop moving forward, if you stop pushing against the natural drift of the day, you will lose your way entirely. You are weary from this navigation, exhausted by the sheer force required to keep your own life from bending even a single degree away from the plan you have built. You are not flawed because your path has felt uneven, or because you are tired of the constant steering. You are not a malfunctioning vessel, and you do not need to be hauled out of the water to be fixed or realigned. You are simply a human being who has been taught that life is a straight, paved road rather than a winding, living current. We will not be checking your heading tonight. We will not be trying to correct your speed or force your bow toward a specific horizon. Your journey does not require you to be the master of the navigation, and you are welcome to simply put down the pole and see where the depth of the water takes you. Perhaps you have felt this specific kind of struggle, where the act of living feels like an exhausting wrestle with a river that refuses to be straight. You might have tried to dam up the detours, to fight the eddies, or to panic when the current pulled you toward a bend you hadn't planned for. But here is the strange, quiet truth of the river. A river is not powerful because it stays straight. It is powerful because it finds the path of least resistance, curving around the obstacles that would shatter a more rigid thing. Your progress is not found in the line you draw on the map. It is found in your ability to move with the water that is already carrying you. Right now, if it feels right, notice the way your body is trying to be a hard, unmoving stake in the riverbed. Your muscles might be locked, your teeth set, and your breath shallow as you try to brace against the evening. You are trying to hold your position, protecting your plans as if they were fragile, precious cargo. But what if the resistance is the only thing causing the exhaustion? What if the struggle is simply the act of trying to stop being a floating, drifting thing? When you feel this ache of being pushed against, you are actually feeling the resistance of your own ego to the natural, curving motion of existence. You are not a failing traveler. You are a boat that has finally arrived at the deep, slow water. Imagine you are drifting in a small, weathered wooden skiff upon a wide, mist-laden river delta where the land and the water have begun to merge into a single, seamless gray. The air is cool and smells faintly of damp silt, crushed reeds, and the sweet, heavy scent of rain-touched earth. There is no urgency here, no map to follow, and no destination that demands your arrival by morning. The only sound is the rhythmic, gentle slap of the water against the hull, a sound that acts as a pulse for the entire landscape. You are not on a schedule tonight. You are not being steered or pushed or navigated toward a goal. You are simply a craft that has untied its own ropes and let the current do the work. The sky is a soft, bruised purple, fading into the dark where the stars are just beginning to peer through the thinning layer of cloud. You do not need to look for the shore. You do not need to provide the power for this journey. The river does not require you to justify the turns it makes, and it does not demand that you explain why you are moving away from the straight path you once imagined. You are invited to set the navigation pole down in the bottom of the boat, to let your limbs go loose, and to allow the tide to turn you naturally, gently, away from the jagged edges of the bank. You are the boat, and the water is kind, and the current is exactly what you need to move through the dark. You have spent your years thinking that you must become a master of the straight line. You have tried to be so precise, so determined to move in a singular, unwavering direction, that you have forgotten the relief of being a thing that moves with the bend. But tonight, consider the profound liberation of letting go of the steering. If you are drifting, you cannot get lost, for there is nowhere to go but the sea. If you are floating, you cannot be broken, for there is no resistance to shatter you. If you are bending, you are simply following the shape of the world, and that is a wisdom that no straight line can ever possess. Everything you are holding on to can be set down in the bottom of the skiff. The worries about whether you are on the right course, the anxieties about the detours, the frantic need to prove your strength by fighting the tide. All of it is just extra weight you have been hauling for too long. Feel how much lighter you become when you stop trying to stuff your own path with the obstacles of your own making. You are not losing your destination. You are gaining the freedom to be whatever the river needs you to be. You are the drift, you are the depth, and you are the vast, cool dark that is finally, truly carrying you through the night. There is no pressure to solve the mystery of your direction before the light comes back. The river will still be there if you choose to wake, and the banks will still be there if you choose to observe. But for these hours, you are officially and completely exempt from the labor of navigating. You do not need to be a pilot of progress. You only need to be the person who rests in the middle of the flow. Feel the tension in your arms, your back, and your forehead beginning to drain away, sliding off your skin like excess moisture being washed into the deep. You are coming home to the rhythm, the flow, and the simple relief of finally being unanchored. If your mind reaches out to define your journey, to assert your control, or to worry about the turns you cannot see, just breathe into that thought and watch it drift away like a floating willow leaf. It has no depth, it has no weight. It is just a shape on the surface of the water, and like all shapes, it will soon find its way into the current. You are not a vessel that requires a destination to be worthy. You are a presence that is already unfolding, perfectly and naturally, exactly as the water unfolds in a wide, bending delta. The river is waiting for you. The depth is stable and ready for your surrender. Every breath you take is a moment of becoming more fluid, a gentle abandonment of your rigid edges, until you are nothing but a soft breathing and deeply peaceful presence in the dark. You are not holding on to anything, and nothing is holding on to you. You are becoming the quietest thing in the world. You are becoming the current itself. You are finding that when you stop trying to straighten the path, you are perfectly, brilliantly free to be the curve. And in that curve, you have finally found the place where you are allowed to sleep, in a region where the hills are stubborn and the valleys are deep. A young man was appointed as the overseer of a newly surveyed canal project. He was obsessed with the idea that the water should arrive at the fields by the shortest, most efficient route possible. He believed that any deviation from a straight line was a sign of incompetence or failure. He spent his days in the hot sun, marking the earth with a long, taut cord, insisting that the laborers dig directly through the stone ridges and across the uneven, hilly terrain. He felt that if he could only enforce this geometric perfection, his work would be respected and his life would finally be secure. He carried a heavy, iron-tipped measuring staff that he used to point at the ground, his knuckles white from the constant, rigid grip. His project was a disaster. The water, forced through the narrow, straight trenches he had carved, became stagnant within days. It was a murky gray pool that refused to move, collecting the debris of the hillside and turning foul to the smell. The laborers were miserable, their hands raw, and their spirits crushed by the futility of fighting the natural lie of the land. The overseer grew increasingly desperate, pacing the length of his straight canal, yelling at the sky, and trying to patch the leaking banks with clay he had to drag from miles away. He was certain that the world was sabotaging his brilliance, that the earth was conspiring against his orderly mind, and he felt the familiar, gnawing ache of inadequacy that always haunted his attempts to control the uncontrollable. A mountain surveyor, a man whose face was mapped with wrinkles as deep as the gullies he studied, visited the site one afternoon. He did not look at the overseer. He simply stood at the edge of the straight canal, leaned on his wooden staff, and watched the water sit, lifeless and heavy, in the trench. He waited until the evening wind began to cool the air. The overseer, expecting a critique or a demand for progress, braced himself to defend his plan. He stood with his iron-tipped staff held high, his jaw clenched and his eyes searching for an argument. The surveyor walked to the edge of the ridge, pointed to a natural river winding through the valley below, and asked if the water there was moving. The overseer looked down and saw the river, clear and shimmering, dancing around the boulders and folding itself into the soft curves of the valley. It was alive, vibrant, and moving with a quiet, persistent energy that made the stagnant canal look like a grave. The surveyor asked him a single question. He asked if the river was lazy for avoiding the straight path, or if it was merely being a river. The overseer did not know how to answer. He looked at his own canal, his straight, dead ditch, and then back at the living water. He felt a sudden, sharp, and uncomfortable crack in the way he viewed his own effort. He realized that the water was not being difficult or defiant. It was just responding to the reality of the ground it traveled upon. The surveyor stepped down into the trench, knelt by the muddy water, and picked up a handful of the heavy clay the overseer had labored to install. He tossed it back into the earth. He told the overseer that the water would always find its own level, and that trying to force it to behave like a stone was a battle he could never win. The man's iron-tipped staff, his symbol of control and precision, suddenly felt incredibly heavy in his hand. He looked at it, really looked at it, and saw that he had been using it as a weapon against the very ground that was meant to support him. He felt the tension in his shoulders begin to unravel, not because the canal was fixed, but because the fight itself had become pointless. He dropped the staff into the dirt. It clattered against a stone, a hollow final sound that felt like the closing of a door. The overseer sat down on the bank, his legs splayed out in the dust, and for the first time in weeks, he didn't feel the need to stand guard over the line. He watched the light fade from the valley, and he watched the shadows reclaim the trench. He didn't have a new plan. He didn't have a better map. He had nothing but the realization that he was exhausted by the act of being an enemy to the landscape. The surveyor left him there in the silence, and the overseer didn't call out for him to return. He stayed by the canal for a long time, listening to the quiet of the night. He noticed that the crickets were starting to sing, and that the air was filling with the scent of damp moss. He was not a failure because the canal had stalled. He was just a human who had forgotten that he was part of the terrain. He had been so focused on the destination, the imagined utility of his project, that he had missed the grace of the valley itself. He looked at the stagnant water, and instead of hating it, he felt a strange, quiet pity for the struggle he had imposed upon it. It was just water, trapped in a shape that didn't fit. When the moon rose, he felt a coolness wash over the landscape. He realized that the valley did not require his permission to exist. The ridge would remain a ridge, and the water would remain water, and his need for a straight line was just a flicker of ego in the vastness of the mountain. He stood up, slowly, and brushed the dirt from his clothes. He didn't try to fill the canal. He didn't try to make it work. He walked away from the trench, leaving it to the rain and the wind, and he felt a lightness in his chest that he hadn't known since he was a child. He was finally and truly at rest. He walked toward the village, his pace natural, unhurried, and responsive to the twists of the hillside. He moved with the slope, he stepped over the roots, and he followed the path as it naturally folded through the brush. He was not fighting the walk. He was enjoying the walk. He was no longer an overseer of a project, but a traveler in a land that was already perfect. He was finally free to be the person who walked, rather than the person who insisted on dictating where the path should go. His mind was quiet. It didn't reach for a new blueprint. It didn't fret about what the villagers would say when they saw the abandoned trench. It was just here in the present moment, feeling the rhythm of his own heartbeat, which was steady, calm, and entirely indifferent to the straightness of his course. He realized that the feeling of being behind, the feeling of being unaccomplished, was just a ghost of the straight-line obsession. He was exactly where he was, doing exactly what he was doing, and that was enough to make him whole. As he reached the village, he saw the river winding through the center, its surface glowing under the moonlight. He sat by the bank, letting his legs dangle into the cool, dark flow. He didn't try to direct it. He didn't try to measure it. He just let the water move past him, a constant, gentle, and unstopping presence that carried everything toward the sea. He felt himself becoming like the water, capable of being redirected without losing his identity, capable of finding the path without needing to force it into place. He was finally, fully, a part of the drift. He closed his eyes, listening to the rush of the water, and felt his breathing slowing to match the rhythm of the current. He was no longer the man who marked the earth with a cord. He was the man who felt the earth move beneath him. He was the man who let go of the iron staff. He was the man who had finally understood that the bending was not an error. The bending was the path, and in that realization he found a peace that could hold the entire valley, the entire river, and the entire night, all without a single drop of tension remaining in his mind. He was home, and the home was moving, and the moving was the peace. The overseer in the valley did not create his suffering by digging a ditch. He created it by insisting that the water must ignore the laws of the land to follow his personal map. You likely feel the shadow of this struggle in your own life, in the way you approach your goals, your relationships, and the quiet hours of your evening. You have internalized the idea that if you are not moving forward on a perfectly straight path, you are effectively not moving at all. You treat your own life like a construction project, believing that every bend, every unexpected detour, and every moment of rest is a structural failure that needs to be corrected by the force of your own will. Bach, this relentless demand for efficiency is the weight of the iron-tipped staff you carry. When you experience a setback, or when a day does not unfold according to your mental blueprint, you experience it not as a natural event, but as a crisis of your own making. You begin to pile up layers of self-judgment, convincing yourself that your inability to stay on the path is a character flaw. This secondary layer of pain, the blame, the regret, the anxiety about being behind, is the stagnant water in the canal. It is the debris of your resistance, sitting heavily in the trench of your mind, preventing the natural, cooling flow of the present moment from reaching your heart. The wisdom of the river is not a call to become passive or to lose your way. It is an invitation to recognize that you are already part of the terrain. The Buddhist teaching here is a simple shift in navigation. You are asked to stop being the surveyor who demands that the world conform to his lines, and instead become the boat that understands the depth of the water. You are not losing your destination when you stop forcing the route. You are gaining the capacity to survive the journey. For the water that curves is the only water that actually makes it to the sea. You do not need to become cold, unfeeling, or indifferent to the outcomes of your life. You can still care deeply. You can still aim for a place of growth, and you can still harbor a hope for your future. The practice is not about removing your desires. It is about removing the iron-tipped staff. When you feel that sharp, cold spike of panic because you have been diverted, you are allowed to feel the disappointment, but you are not required to build a trench around it. You can acknowledge that things have changed, and you can let the disappointment move through you like a current that bends around a bend. It does not have to be a permanent, stagnant pool of blame. Suffering often resides in the space between what you expected and what the landscape is actually providing. If you keep looking at the blueprint, you will always be disappointed by the geography. But if you look at the geography, you will find that the river is already doing the work for you. The peace you seek is not found at the end of a perfectly straight road. It is found in the moments where you finally, courageously, decide to put down the weight of your control and allow the water to show you the way. You are a much better sailor when you stop trying to be the canal builder. Think of your resistance as the habit of a person who is trying to push the mountain out of the path of the river. You think the mountain is the problem, so you throw your energy into the struggle of moving it. You become tired, you become bitter, and you become brittle. But the mountain has been there since before you arrived, and it will be there long after you have moved on. The river does not hate the mountain, it just goes around it. It finds a new way, it gathers its strength, and it continues its journey, all without ever once complaining about the terrain. You are that river. You have spent so much energy trying to justify the path you chose that you have forgotten how to enjoy the view from the bend. The truth is that your life is not a straight line, and it was never meant to be. It is a complex, beautiful, and deeply unpredictable sequence of turns, dips, and slow, shallow stretches. When you can embrace this, the exhaustion of trying to straighten the path simply evaporates. You do not need to be a finished, geometric success to be valid. You are a living, breathing part of the whole, and the whole is moving, and the moving is the meaning. As you lie here, feel how your sense of direction is becoming more fluid, more spacious, and more aligned with the natural motion of the night. You are not separate from the river. You are not separate from the valley. You are the current where the life is held. When you let go of the need to be a straight-line architect, You find that the room expands. The darkness becomes a sanctuary rather than an obstacle, and your breath feels more like the tide itself. You are finally allowed to be soft, to be responsive, to be patient, and to merge with the quiet, dark pools of your own awareness. This is the deep, quiet secret of the water. When you no longer need to be the authority of the path, you are finally free to hold the path. You are the flowing space that welcomes the moon. You are the quiet bend that holds the reflection. You are the eddy that allows the silt to settle. You are the boat that is finally at peace with the rhythm of the tide. Because you are the whole, you have nothing to fear, nothing to force, and nothing to justify. There is a natural, inherent grace in this realization. It is the grace of the river as it touches the bank, and the grace of the boat as it feels the turn of the water. It is not a distant, unreachable goal. It is right here beneath your breath, beneath your skin, and beneath the thoughts that are finally beginning to settle like calm water. You are not a person who is failing to be efficient. You are a consciousness that has already arrived at the only place that matters, the place where the need to be the overseer ceases and the rest begins. Take a moment now to feel the truth of this in your own bones. Feel the sensation of letting go, not just as an idea, but as a physical, visceral release. You are not clutching the staff anymore. You are not trying to force the water to follow the cord. You are allowed to be porous, to be open, to be soft, and to merge with the quiet, dark shadows of the valley. You are not becoming less. You are becoming everything. You are being reclaimed by the silence of the night, and you are finally, truly, perfectly at home in your own curving space. Everything you have been holding is being set down on the soft, silty bank. The project, the planning, the proving, the perfect lines, all of it is being washed away by the tide of the dark. You are allowed to stop. You are allowed to be slow. You are allowed to be exactly where the river has carried you, without any requirement to be further along. You are not a project that requires a final, straight completion. You are a presence that is already unfolding, perfectly and naturally, exactly as the water unfolds in a wide, bending delta. The valley is waiting for you. The rhythm is stable and ready for your release. Every breath you take is a moment of becoming lighter, a gentle surrender of your rigid navigation, until you are nothing but a soft breathing and deeply peaceful presence in the dark. You are not holding on to any direction, and no direction is holding on to you. You are becoming the quietest thing in the world. You are becoming the current itself. You are finding that when you stop trying to dictate the course, you are perfectly, brilliantly free to be the flow. And in that flow, you have finally found the place where you are allowed to sleep. Find the position that allows your body to feel like a weightless reed in the current. You do not need to sit in any particular way, and you do not need to hold your spine as if it were a surveyor's rigid stake. Simply let your weight sink into the support beneath you. Feeling the surface hold your form exactly as the riverbed holds the water. Close your eyes, or leave them softly half open, and notice the rhythm of your breath. Do not change it. Do not attempt to slow it down or deepen it to match a specific tempo. Just notice how the breath enters your chest and exits your lungs, moving through you like water finding its way through a narrow, reed-lined passage. If you notice a thought appearing, a sudden urge to plan, or to measure your progress, or to worry about the straightness of your day, acknowledge it without turning it into a task. See the thought for what it is, a small, floating fragment of debris on the surface of your awareness. You do not need to catch it. You do not need to stop it. You do not need to pull it from the stream to examine its contents. Just watch it pass. Notice the color of the thought, the feeling it leaves in your stomach, or the urgency it places in your fingertips. Then let it go. Let it drift toward the bend, carried away by the momentum of your own natural movement. Maybe you can name the pattern of this thought. You might realize it is the familiar, sharp, and narrow impulse to take control. You might feel it as a tightening in your jaw or a bracing sensation in your shoulders. Do not judge this pattern. It is simply the way you were taught to navigate. It is a habit, not a destination. When you feel that tightening, simply bring the image of the iron-tipped staff to your mind. See yourself holding it, pressing it into the mud of your own peace, trying to stop the flow of the evening. See how heavy the staff is. See how much effort it takes to keep it upright against the weight of the water. If it feels right, Imagine yourself reaching out with your hands. Feel the cold, hard texture of that iron tip, the way it grips the earth and creates a ripple of resistance around you. Now, with a slow and deliberate movement, open your fingers, let the staff slip from your grasp. Feel the relief as the weight leaves your hand. See the staff sink into the silt of the riverbed, becoming part of the landscape rather than a tool for your labor. It is gone now. You are no longer holding it. You are no longer pinning yourself to the spot. Feel how the water immediately begins to move past your skin, smoothing out the ripples you created. Notice what happens to the tightness in your body when the staff is gone. The bracing might not vanish instantly, and that is perfectly fine. It may linger like the vibration of a string after the note has been played. Just notice it. Breathe into the feeling of the muscles becoming soft, allowing the water to carry your weight. You are becoming a part of the landscape you inhabit. You are no longer the overseer of the canal, and you are no longer the judge of your own drift. You are simply the space where the night happens. There is no urgency in this space. There is no requirement to prove that you are moving toward a specific point. If you find that your mind is still reaching for the staff, if you find that you are back to measuring the distance to morning, do not become frustrated. This is just the way the water eddies behind a boulder. It is normal. It is part of the path. Gently recognize the return of the impulse. Name it again as a desire for control. Place that desire into the river and watch it float away. Return your awareness to the feeling of the breath moving through you, not as a duty, but as a cool, refreshing current. You are doing nothing more than observing the natural life of your own mind. There is no need to force yourself into a state of emptiness. You are not trying to drain the canal. You are trying to become the river that carries all things without clinging to any of them. If you feel a wave of emotion, or a sudden burst of memory, or a lingering concern from the day, let it be. Let it move through you like a current of cold water. Do not try to warm it. Do not try to slow it. Just feel it moving past, leaving you exactly as you were before it arrived. You are the deep, slow water that holds the sky. You are the space that holds the night. If it feels right, notice the sensation of your hands resting in your lap. They are not holding a staff. They are not gripping the cord. They are simply resting, soft and pliable, as if they were leaves resting on the surface of a pond. Feel the coolness of the air on your skin. Notice the sound of the silence that surrounds you, the quiet, humming pulse of a room that is finally allowed to be empty. You have nowhere else to be. You have no work left to finish. You have finished the work of being a separate, driving force. You have arrived at the union of your own awareness and the flow of the world. There is no danger in this stillness. You might feel a momentary sense of being untethered, a phantom fear that if you are not navigating, you will drift into the dark and be lost. But look at the water around you. It is moving with purpose. It is guided by the gravity of the earth and the slope of the land. It does not need to know where it is going to be exactly where it is. It trusts the depth of the basin. It trusts the wisdom of the slope. You can trust the gravity of your own life. You can trust the way the night is pulling you toward rest. Nothing needs to be resolved tonight. No conversation needs to be rewritten in your mind. No error needs to be corrected by the force of your intent. The river will continue to flow while you sleep, and the delta will continue to shift while you dream. But you will be the peace that holds all of it without effort. You are permitted to stop solving the world. You are permitted to stop building the path. You are permitted to just be the boat that floats, the reed that bends, and the current that carries the light of the moon. Take one final, slow breath and let it go with a sense of complete and total release. As the air leaves your lungs, imagine your entire body softening into the floor, losing the sharp, rigid corners of your identity until you feel as round and as smooth as a river stone. You are not a project. You are not a problem. You are a presence that is finally, beautifully, still. You are ready to let the day dissolve, and you are ready to let the night take over the navigation. You are home, and you are resting, and you are exactly as you need to be. In a remote coastal village where the ocean currents met the mountain runoff, there lived a master boatman known for his ability to navigate the most treacherous, swirling rapids. He carried a long, polished oar made of dark ironwood, a heavy and ornate tool that he believed was the source of his mastery. He was a man who lived in a state of constant, high-stakes vigilance. He was convinced that every swirl, every eddy, and every unexpected shift in the water was a personal challenge to his skill, and he was terrified that one day he would finally lose his grip. He spent his nights in his small hut, sharpening the blade of his oar and reviewing the mental maps of the river, certain that if he ever faltered, the river would swallow him whole. His daughter, a young woman who helped him maintain the boats, watched him with a quiet sadness. She saw the way his muscles remained knotted even in sleep. She saw the way he would twitch at the sound of the wind, his hands instinctively reaching for the oar as if he were already fighting a ghost current. He was a man whose entire sense of self was tied to his ability to combat the water. One morning, as they were preparing to ferry a group of travelers across the churning delta, the master boatman noticed a strange, persistent cross-current he had never seen before. It was a complex, beautiful, and dangerous tangle of water that seemed to defy the usual rules of the channel. He gripped his ironwood oar so tightly his knuckles turned white. He prepared to plunge the blade into the water to force his boat into a straight, safe line, just as he had done for 40 years. But as he reached out to strike, his daughter caught his hand. She did not speak. She simply pointed to a cluster of small wooden rafts drifting silently through the tangle, moving with the current rather than against it. They were not fighting the cross-current. They were letting it pull them where it needed to go, turning and bending with the force of the water, and they were navigating the tangle with an ease that made the master boatman's own tension look absurd. The boatman felt a sudden, sharp, and uncomfortable hollow in his chest. He realized that for his entire life, he had been treating the river as an adversary. He had been so busy correcting the water that he had never actually felt the water. He pulled his oar back, his breath coming in shallow, ragged bursts. He stared at the swirling mess of water, and for the first time he did not reach out to strike it. He sat down on the bench of his boat, dropped the heavy oar onto the floorboards with a dull, echoing thud, and closed his eyes. He stopped. He stopped the internal machine of calculation. He stopped the mental rehearsals of danger. He simply sat in the middle of the chaos, breathing in the scent of salt and silt, and waited. He did not know what would happen. He did not know if the boat would spin or if it would be swept off course. For the first time in his life, he was comfortable with that uncertainty. He felt the fear bubbling up in his stomach, a hot, sharp sensation of impending doom. But instead of trying to push it down or fight it, he let it stay there. He allowed the fear to exist, like a wave passing beneath the hull. He did not react. He did not try to fix the situation. He just sat, keeping his hands relaxed in his lap, letting the boat decide its own path through the tangle. The boat turned. It spun in a slow, graceful circle, dancing with the cross-current, and then, as if by magic, it slipped into the calm, deep water on the other side. The master boatman opened his eyes. He looked at his daughter, who was smiling at him with a look of profound, quiet recognition. He looked at the heavy ironwood oar, lying on the floorboards. It was just a piece of wood now. It was no longer a weapon of control. He did not pick it up to steer. He let the boat drift, feeling the subtle, rhythmic pulse of the current beneath him. A pulse he had ignored for decades because he was too busy trying to impose his own rhythm upon the river. He realized then that the hurt of the past, the near misses, the exhaustion, and the fear of the water were not caused by the river. They were caused by his insistence that he be the one to dictate the course. He looked at the water and felt a sudden, overwhelming sense of compassion for the man he had been. The man who spent his life arm-wrestling the tide. He did not judge that man. He did not hate him for his rigidity. He simply understood him, and in that understanding, he found a way to let go of the burden. He chose, as a small act of discipline, to stop correcting his own movements. He sat perfectly still, letting the boat flow where it was pulled. The boat was not magically immune to the hazards of the river. It was just moving in harmony with the hazards. The boatman felt the boat graze a submerged log, a small, jarring bump that would have previously sent him into a frenzy of panicked steering. This time he just exhaled. He felt the jolt. He noticed the sensation of the bump, and then he let it go, watching the ripples fade into the surface. He was not ignoring the reality of the river, but he was choosing to stop layering his own panic on top of the river's natural motion. He was choosing to sit with the reality of the drift. He began to notice things he had never seen before. He noticed the play of light on the surface of the water, the way the clouds mirrored the shapes of the channels, and the quiet, rhythmic breathing of his own chest. He noticed that the water was not just dangerous, it was also life-giving, cool, and incredibly patient. He felt a deep, resonant connection to the movement of the earth, as if he were not just a traveler on the water, but a part of the water's own ongoing eternal conversation with the shore. The fear did not disappear entirely, but it changed. It was no longer a command to act. It was just a sensation, a signal of his own sensitivity to the environment. When they reached the opposite bank, he did not jump out to tie the boat with the same frantic, hurried energy as before. He climbed out slowly, feeling the mud beneath his feet, and he spent a moment just standing there, listening to the water wash against the wood. He helped the passengers disembark, offering a steady hand, and he did not worry about the schedule, the efficiency of the trip, or the reputation he had built as the master of the rapids. He was just a boatman, and that was enough. He felt a quiet, simmering joy in the simple act of existing, of breathing, of being present in a world that was always moving. He walked toward his hut, his steps soft on the earth. He did not try to map the next day. He did not try to fix the oar. He went inside, sat on his mat, and allowed himself to be tired. He was tired in a way that felt like falling into deep, cool water. It was a clean, honest, and total exhaustion that promised a long, undisturbed night of rest. He did not need to be the master anymore. He was the student of the river, and the lesson had finally started to sink into his skin, his bones, and the very center of his heart. He lay down, feeling the coolness of the floor against his back. He didn't check the door. He didn't review his list of duties. He just let the silence of the night settle into the room, a silence that felt like the calm water on the far side of the rapids. He felt his mind softening, letting go of the edges of the day, allowing the thoughts to dissolve into the dark. He was no longer trying to swim against the current of the world. He was the current, he was the boat, and he was the quiet, still center of the night. He was finally, truly, and completely at peace. You have been living under the assumption that your internal world is a construction site where everything must be paved, leveled, and measured to perfection. This belief is the primary source of the heavy, dragging friction you feel in your mind. Whenever an unexpected event occurs, or whenever your emotions take a turn that does not fit your map, you immediately treat the experience as a defect in your character. You start to panic, replaying the past to identify where you missed a turn, or rehearsing the future to guard against another detour. This mental labor is exhausting. It is like trying to build a dam out of sand while the river is already rising to meet you. The pain of life is inevitable. The sudden bend in the river, the silt that clogs the channel, and the change in the weather are all realities of the world you inhabit. But notice how much extra labor you expend by refusing to accept these realities as they are. You take the initial difficulty, and you wrap it in layers of shame, fear, and self-judgment. You turn a simple obstacle into a personal indictment. You convince yourself that if you were stronger or smarter or more prepared, the river would be straighter for you. This is the mechanism of suffering. It is not the bend itself that hurts, but your refusal to stop trying to force the water back into a line that does not exist. Think of your consciousness as a wide basin that is designed to catch the flow of experiences. When you live with resistance, you are essentially trying to pour concrete into that basin. You want the space to be hard, predictable, and permanent. You want to control the shape of the water so that you never have to be surprised again. But concrete has no life. It does not grow. It does not move, and eventually it just cracks under the pressure of the very water it tried to contain. Peace is not the absence of the flow. It is the wisdom to keep the basin open and deep, allowing the water to enter, to settle, and eventually to move on without you ever needing to claim it or fight it. You are so afraid of uncertainty that you would rather live in a prison of your own planning than be free in a world that is always changing. You seek approval from your own ego, constantly asking if you have met the standard of the straight path you drew for yourself. When you miss the mark, you punish yourself with shame, believing that if you can just make yourself feel guilty enough, you will somehow gain the power to fix the future. But shame is not a navigation tool. It is an anchor. It only serves to keep you stuck in the muck of your own past, preventing you from catching the current that is waiting to move you toward the next moment. The Buddhist insight is not that you should stop having a life or stop having desires. It is that you should stop turning your desires into a rigid blueprint for reality. When you release the need to control the outcome, you are not giving up. You are finally participating in the journey. The river does not need a map. It already knows the way because it responds to the gravity of the earth and the slope of the land. You too are guided by the gravity of your own nature. When you stop fighting the turns, you discover that the current is not dragging you toward disaster. It is carrying you toward the depth of your own being. Consider how much of your identity you have built around the struggle. You have become a person who fights the rapids. You have become a person who prides themselves on their resistance. But what if you were a person who could move with the tide? What if you were a person who could sit in the middle of a swirling eddy and find it to be a place of rest rather than a place of danger? This change in perspective is not a transformation of the river. It is a transformation of the sailor. It is the moment you put down the iron oar and realize that the boat was already seaworthy without your constant, frantic correction. You often fear that if you stop trying to fix yourself, you will somehow disappear. You worry that if you are not actively managing your thoughts and judging your progress, you will lose your way or become invisible to the world. But look at the landscape around you tonight. Everything is moving. Everything is changing. Nothing is fighting to remain fixed in place, yet nothing is being lost. The trees are not trying to be statues. The air is not trying to be a solid object. They are exactly what they are, and in that honesty, they are perfectly at peace. You can afford to be that honest with yourself. You do not need to be a completed project to be worthy of rest. You do not need to have arrived at a destination to be allowed to stop moving. You are a work in progress that has finally decided to enjoy the process of becoming. When you look at your past mistakes, you see them as failures. But the river does not see a failure in the bend it took last year. It sees a movement. It sees a moment of transition. Your history is simply the path you have already traveled. It has already been written into the geography of your life. There is no need to go back and try to redraw the lines. Feel the way your body is releasing the tension of your constant navigation. You are becoming softer. You are becoming more porous. You are letting the night pass through you like water passing through a net. There is no need to catch the events of your day. There is no need to hold on to the conversations, the tasks, or the anxieties. They belong to the current, and the current is doing its work without your interference. You are just the space where the movement occurs, and that space is entirely, perfectly, and quietly safe. The fear of uncertainty is just the fear of not knowing what is around the next bend. But the bend is exactly where the surprise is. The bend is where the new landscape appears. The bend is where the beauty is found. If you were only ever on a straight line, you would never see anything new. You would never encounter the unexpected depth of the delta. You would never feel the shift of the tide. You are a traveler who is lucky enough to have a river that keeps giving you new vistas, new rhythms, and new ways to be. Everything you are thinking right now is just a thought. It is not the truth. It is not the path. It is not the destination. It is a flicker of light on the water. It is a ripple caused by a stone you threw hours ago. Let it settle. Let the water become clear. Let the silence in this room take up the space where your planning used to live. You are so much larger than your thoughts. You are the basin that holds them. You are the depth that receives them. And tonight, you are the calm that swallows them whole. There is a natural rhythm to your breathing that you have been ignoring for a long time. It is a slow, pulsing beat that is completely independent of your need to solve your life. It is the rhythm of the tide. It is the rhythm of the mountain. It is the rhythm of your own heart when it is finally truly unburdened. Trust that rhythm. It is a better navigator than any plan you could ever write. It will move you where you need to go, and it will keep you afloat even when the water is deep and dark. You have done enough for today. You have built enough dams. You have measured enough miles. You have fought enough currents. Now, you are invited to be the observer, the traveler, and the guest of the river. The water is moving, the night is deep, and you are exactly where you are meant to be in the movement of the whole. You are finally completely at home in the flow, and that is all you need to know to close your eyes. The next time you are lying in the quiet dark, waiting for a reply to a message that feels heavy with importance, notice how your mind tries to act as a dam against the silence. You stare at the screen, your thumb hovering, heart racing, convinced that the speed of the response will determine the safety of your ground. This is the moment to put down the ironwood oar. You are currently trying to force the river to run through the narrow pipe of your own anxiety. Instead, try to feel the weight of your body against the mattress, acknowledging that you are not the one who determines the flow of this conversation. The message will arrive when it arrives, and in the space between now and then, you have the permission to be a boat that is simply floating. When you replay a mistake from the afternoon, turning it over in your mind like a jagged stone, remember that you are trying to reach back and change the terrain you have already traveled. That ground is solid now. It is fixed in the geography of your history. Your remorse is a form of erosion that does not fix the mistake, but only makes the current moment feel like a struggle. Allow yourself the grace of a brief, honest look at what happened, and then let the current pull you into the next hour. You are not the person who made that error. You are the person who is currently breathing in the middle of the river, and that person is allowed to move on. There is a particular ache in feeling like you are behind, as if all the others are paddling toward a distant, golden delta while you are trapped in a slow, shallow bank. This is just the shadow of a map you drew for yourself years ago. It has no bearing on the actual depth of your life. When the comparison rises, treat it as a passing cloud reflected on the surface of the water. It has no depth. It is not real. You are exactly where the river has taken you, and the destination is not a point on a line. It is the ability to navigate your own waters with a steady, unhurried hand. In your relationships, you may feel the urge to grip tightly, to steer the other person toward the outcomes you desire, fearing that if you don't manage the course, you will be cast adrift. But caring is not the same as constructing a cage. You can love someone deeply and still allow them to move through their own currents. When you feel the need to command the direction, stop, pause. Take a breath that reaches deep into your belly. Let your hands go soft. You are not the helmsman of another soul. You are a companion in the water, and there is more safety in being a witness to their drift than there is in trying to fight their tide. You often carry a polished, professional smile when you are feeling heavy, acting as if you are a master of the rapids while your interior is swirling with doubt. This is a labor that demands far more energy than you realize. It is the act of pretending that the river is calm when you are in the middle of a cataract. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to feel the turbulence. You do not have to maintain the illusion of absolute mastery for the sake of the shore. Being authentic in your own difficulty is a far more courageous act than acting as if you are in total control of the path. Checking your phone for reassurance is a modern attempt to gauge the wind. You hope that a notification will prove your worth, or that an approval will solidify your footing. But your value is not a variable that depends on the current state of your messages. It is an inherent part of your presence. When the urge to check the device pulls at your attention, treat it as an impulse that has no authority over your peace. Let it pass. Notice the impulse, name the need for stability, and then let the ripple of the thought fade back into the depth of the dark. When you want to rest but feel the prickling of guilt, as if you have not done enough to earn the harbor, remember that the river never asks the boat to justify its stillness. The water does not demand that you finish a certain number of miles before you are permitted to let the anchor down. Your rest is not a reward for your labor. It is a fundamental requirement of your existence. You are a human being, not a machine for progress. You have the right to be still, to be slow, and to be entirely unoccupied, simply because you are part of the living flow. The discipline you seek is not in the strength of your grip, but in the softness of your hands. It is the practice of noticing your own panic without obeying it. When you feel the urge to lash out, to defend, or to force a resolution, you can choose the pause instead. You can choose to be the boat that floats for a heartbeat before it decides on its next movement. This is not weakness, it is the highest form of navigation. It is the wisdom that recognizes that the water is the power, and that you are just the one who has finally learned to ride the wave. As you prepare to slip into the deepest part of the night, release the need to summarize the day. You do not need to account for your miles or to justify the turns you took. The ledger is already closed. The river is moving through the delta, carrying everything that happened today into the vastness of the sea, where it will be dissolved and transformed. You are finally and truly allowed to stop the work. You are no longer the overseer of the canal, no longer the master of the ironwood ore, and no longer the one who has to solve the mystery of the path. You are becoming the cool, quiet darkness that rests upon the water. You are the stillness at the center of the bend. You are the peace that exists when you stop trying to be the one who directs the motion. Your breath is steady now, not because you have commanded it, but because you have allowed the gravity of the night to claim you. There is nothing left to hold. There is nothing left to fear. There is only the movement of the tide, the depth of the basin, and the gentle, slow drift toward the morning. You are entirely held, you are entirely safe, and you are finally drifting. The weight of the day is finally shedding from your frame, peeling away like silt dropping from a boat that has reached the quiet, unmoving reaches of the bay. You do not need to carry the canal or the oar anymore. You do not need to hold the map of your own improvement in your hands. Those tools were meant for the rapids, not for the harbor where you now rest. Let your muscles go soft like wet clay that has finally been left alone by the rain. Feel the floor beneath you, the solid, unyielding earth that is not asking you to move, not asking you to build, and not asking you to prove anything at all. You are a vessel that has finished its voyage. You are a sailor who has stepped onto the dock. You are a presence that is allowed to simply be. Breathe into the depth of your chest, and as you exhale, imagine the air carrying away the last echoes of the surveyor's voice. You are not measuring the night. You are not checking the pulse of your own progress. You are letting the current of your breath slow, a gentle tidal movement that pulls you deeper into the dark. If a thought ripples across your mind, let it be just that. A ripple that fades before it can reach the shore of your awareness. You are the shore now. You are the place where the motion ceases, where the rush of the river meets the vast stillness of the deep. There is nothing to fix in the silence. There is nothing to resolve in the dark. Your body is sinking into the support below, heavier, slower, and more anchored than it has been in many moons. Feel the tension leaving your jaw, the space opening behind your eyes, and the quiet settling into your heart. You are not a construction project. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a living, breathing part of the dark, and the dark knows exactly how to cradle you until the light returns. Every fiber of your being is learning to trust the weight of its own existence. You are no longer navigating the channel. You are the channel, you are the water, and you are the stillness that allows the sediment to settle to the bottom. If you find yourself reaching for the iron ore in your dream, notice the ghost of the grip and then let your fingers curl open, letting the tool drop into the silt where it belongs. You have been holding on for so long that you have forgotten how it feels to have empty hands. Feel the space where the burden used to be. It is a cool, clear, and perfectly spacious emptiness. It is the peace you were looking for when you were busy building dams. You are allowed to be empty. You are allowed to be unproductive. You are allowed to let the night run its course without you doing a single thing to influence the outcome. The river is already moving, even while you sleep. The mountain runoff is continuing its journey. The delta is shifting its shape and the tides are turning in the dark. But none of this requires your oversight. You are free from the duty of the path. You are free from the tyranny of the destination. You are simply the space that allows the night to exist. Sink deeper now. Feel the heaviness of your limbs as they blend into the surface of the bed, feeling as soft and as still as a stone on the riverbed, worn perfectly smooth by 1,000 years of simple, unhurried flow. The air in the room is cooling, the shadows are deepening, and the pulse of your heartbeat is the only rhythm that matters now. It is a slow, steady, and entirely natural drum. It does not need to beat faster to achieve anything. It is beating just to keep you here, in the present, in the quiet, and in the safety of your own skin. You have arrived at the final, wide basin where the water meets the sea. There is no more current to fight, no more navigation to perform, and no more straight lines to draw. You are home. There is a profound, liquid relief in the realization that you have finally stopped the struggle. You are drifting, not into a void, but into the deep, rich, and nourishing source of your own life. Everything you have worried about today, every fear, every plan, and every doubt is being washed away, dissolved into the vast midnight sea that is currently held within your own quiet mind. You are becoming the water. You are becoming the stillness. You are becoming the sleep that swallows the day. The last of the tension is flowing out of your toes, out of your fingers, and out of the center of your chest. You are nothing but a soft, breathing, and deeply peaceful presence in the dark. You are permitted to let go of the world. You are permitted to stop being the one who keeps the order. You are permitted to dissolve, just for a few hours, into the beautiful, dark, and perfectly silent river that moves through the heart of the night. If the river were to speak to you now, in the language of the current and the stone, what is the one thing it would ask you to remember as you drift away?